we talk about climate change, I always ask guests to the show, how do you define it? Because there's a lot of propaganda for and against. Where do you stand?
I definitely believe it's a thing. It's real. There are a lot of ways to define it, right? A lot of debates to have on how severe it is. Is it real or not? But I think the thing that it's really hard to deny is it's not natural to have our biggest coolant on the planet, our oceans, be at the temperature they're at. And it's just such an objective measure. It's something that we clearly haven't had in modern history of thousands of years. It hasn't been that way, right? The physical sciences of what happens when things start melting and coastlines start changing and things like that, and what sort of impacts it has, not only on how we live and what our domiciles are, but also on our economics, right? Because now you're taking away part of our gross domestic product generation, right? You got a house now that doesn't exist anymore. It just literally went away. Regardless of where you come on the details, it wouldn't be wise to just ignore it, right? Yeah. We all have the ability to be better or to be more responsible to something.
What up, world? Just tapping in. Hey, we up here in Edgewood on the roof, man. House ain't got no roof. Hey, look, this is where we want to bring you the next episode of Keep That Same Green Energy podcast. I'm going to let my guest introduce himself momentarily. But we up here, ATL. Salute. Keep that same green energy. It's a great view. Peep game.
Energy. You think we'd be sick? I'm running out of energy. See, we use
what up, world? Legrand, hip-hop artist and climate activist. Welcome you to this new episode of Keep That Same Green Energy podcast. Like we always do, we ask our guests to introduce themselves. Yes, please introduce yourself. Thanks, Chris.
My name is Brock Harvey, proud resident of Atlanta, Georgia. Property owner here on Edgewood Avenue. We are now sitting in the Sweet Auburn, Edgewood Avenue district of Atlanta. Happy, like I said, and proud to be real tapped into the energy here and committed to doing what I can to uplift the responsibility human beings have on this trip, and yeah, do what I can to make everything in this world more sustainable.
And do, and you definitely do. So we ask our guests to give, to speak to the connection between the two. I've known Brock for a few decades, but how do we get introduced to each other, or what's our connection, and then talk about a song or something that reminds you of me or draws it all together.
Yeah, so I met you about 30 years ago, give or take. It's been a while.
I was a toddler at the time.
A good few decades. Had the pleasure of playing football with your bro at Princeton, and whether it was on campus or in 2-5 down in South Philly, initially met you and started to learn about Legrand. The song that comes to mind, just because it's more recent than anything, is the song that we kind of stumbled upon down in Costa Rica on the trip in 2020.
The Foreign Dreaming song.
Foreign Dreaming.
Which didn't start out as Foreign Dreaming.
Right.
The pandemic
That's
had
right.
happened.
That's right. And it's funny because I in the last 48 hours, I kind of put that together. It's like, no, we couldn't have had the song on this trip, but it was born out of the trip.
Because we had talked. I think what I originally was talking about is, okay, I'm going to Costa Rica to see about retiring there and all the great things, and we'll talk about where they are in the renewable space. But I was like, I want to go shoot a video there. I'm like, it's perfect. It's paradise. I'm gonna go do it. But the subject matter changed obviously when the pandemic hit. It was like, okay, we can't be talking about partying and having a good time when the man is out there getting people.
Regardless of the social distancing. I mean, it's just not the vibe right now.
Exactly. So that makes sense.
So I didn't realize you pivoted with that, but yeah, it makes sense now looking back at the timeline. But yeah, that's my most intimate connection was, Legrand musically
Yeah.
was from that experience in Costa Rica, and obviously that ties into what we were talking about here today.
Yeah, and so just to connect it from my perspective, I had seen Brock on campus at Princeton, visiting my brother a few times, and I've been to some parties with him and seen him, pretty turned up. But it was also we got to know each other a little bit better, playing football, a little rough league that we had in 2-5, and he was able to throw the rock for the Deuce Pound team and secure some victories for us. So and then just him being a friend of the family, close to the family. We've had some discussions over the years about different things. He's been praying about different stuff. He's about mine, and I think that was the thing that that led us to this on this green mission was my initial interest in Costa Rica presumably was just about retirement, but at its core, I was more attracted to the fact that 98, 99% of the country runs on renewable energy. And so while there's a myriad of reasons why you would want to retire there, the currency exchange being one, the climate, the year-round weather, and all that. But it's fundamentally if you're a big climate advocate, certainly Costa Rica is leading from the front.
Yeah,
Definitely leading from the front. Absolutely. So we asked folks about their definition of coming as we're transitioning with Costa Rica. When we talk about climate change, I always ask guests to the show, how do you define it? Is it real? Because there's a lot of propaganda for and against. Where do you stand relative to it?
Well, I definitely believe it's a thing. It's real. There are a lot of ways to define it, right? A lot of debates to have on how severe it is. Is it real or not? But I think the thing that it's really really hard to deny is it's not natural to have our biggest coolant on the planet, our oceans, be at the temperature they're at. And it's just such an objective measure. It's something that we clearly haven't had in modern history of thousands of years. It hasn't been that way, right? So, and it's so extreme right now. It's hard to believe. It's hard to understand how we cool ourselves off, right?
Yeah.
And then you go further into just your physical sciences of what happens when things start melting, and the coastlines start changing and things like that, and what sort of impacts that has not only on how we live and what our domiciles are, but also on our economics, right? Because now you're taking away part of our gross domestic product generation, right? Or part of our tax base, things like that.
Yep.
And what kind of impacts does that have? Or individual families' wealth, right? You got a house now that doesn't exist anymore. It just literally went away.
Yeah.
It wasn't insured because that's already in things like that. How does that impact our world? And it seems to all be negative. So I think really, really, regardless of where you come on the details, it wouldn't be wise to just ignore it, right?
Exactly.
It's going to have some sort of impact.
Where there's smoke, there's fire, literally.
No matter what the cause of it is,
Yeah.
and you spend time trying to figure out exactly what the cause of it is. But disagree, there is an impact. It is happening, and whether it's a cycle or some sort of change, static or progressive change, the impact is real.
So if you had, and this is kind of a question that has come, I'll say from the audience, right? So if you had, billions of dollars, where do you think you could have the most immediate impact on climate change from a technical perspective? There's some folks that believe in kind of soil drawdown or different ways to kind of immediately mitigate. But if money was no object, what would be your approach?
Great question. Talking about, and I really think it depends on how much money you're talking about. But if you're talking about something in the billions, I think that's the opportunity where you can really take advantage of Well, let me say this first. I think clearly infrastructure, especially standing here on this roof with these dinosaur pieces of infrastructure is, and the legacy of it is a problem, right?
Yep.
And unless you're talking about something in the billions, you're not going to be able to, efficiently move that needle, right?
Yep.
So
Yep.
now you bring the infrastructure to the table, but you know, users are people who are making decisions every day to actually spend, um, um, burn the car or produce the carbon in the atmosphere or use the kilowatt hour. That's they're actually making those decisions. So you have to appeal to the mind too, right? And that's some sort of marketing effort. So if you can get the infrastructure into it, I would just combine it with psychological aspects of it by putting together a
Incentives, different things.
no. I want to just do it, right? I
Okay.
want to put the
Mandate
structures
type of thing.
in place, whether it be on like the small um, district level rollout of new ways to create productive pieces of our economy that are not as destructive to our environment, and do that as a showcase, but also as a as a profit making development.
Yeah, because you need that.
Yeah, and just show this is possible. I mean, it takes more thought, it takes different thought. You have to explore different ideas of how you build things, create community.
And show them that it can work, and then they just kind of build on that.
That's right.
So
What has to happen from some sort? If you're talking about billions, now, right?
Yeah.
You're
That's
talking about
it. No
millions,
money, no
we're never
object.
going there, right? Yeah. Talking about billions, you can start that kind of. You can scale those sort of technologies to a point where it makes sense.
Yep.
And then you can make it so other people can plug into it, whether it be water systems, whether it be, any sort of renewable energy, whether it be hydro, whether it be water reclamation or wind power or solar. You can start putting the systems together where it makes sense to make that investment and then spread it out, spread the benefit to a district level instead of just having it on your house. Where you can
It's
use so much
interesting.
of it.
It's interesting. I didn't hear you say anything crazy like, I've heard some things where people are like, oh, let's build this huge umbrella to like to cover a third of the planet and block the sun for a couple months. Like, it's insane. But again, drastic times call for drastic measures. But you brought up
We're
the
not
water.
there yet.
You brought up the water piece, and it's obviously recent and relevant to us here in Atlanta. So we just went through a situation where you talked about infrastructure issues, right? So that's what led me to, we just had a situation where we had huge water main breaks here in Atlanta, shut the city down. We've got boiling water advisories. As somebody that, kind of deals, in the space here and buildings and infrastructure, stuff like that. Is there anything we can do better? Like, in Atlanta can do better?
To current day, I would be some property across the street from here that literally was an old road, and this road had storm sewer lines underneath it. So, and this property condemned that road and made it part of one parcel that are now. Those storm sewer lines are 100 years old. They literally are 100, and I've run cameras in them as part of in free development work to see them. I mean, it's like you're in a Egyptian tomb.
Oh,
I mean,
wow.
They're just
that old,
bricks.
like,
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy, right? They're and they're falling apart. Luckily, on my property, there's been a new one put in.
Okay.
But I mean, the entry into it comes through this junction that looks like an old train line. I mean, it's holes everywhere, right? Going into these old 100-year-old channels. So you got that project now. This is on bare land, right? But you got that project under existing roads, running across other pieces of private property are not as accessible. I mean, it's a massive undertaking to think that we can improve that in one project, right? It's going to have to almost happen when you see problems and you have to fix that acute problem, and then you bring it up to code, right? And that's typically the way
the municipalities deal with
It has
issues
to,
like that.
they had to wait till it falls apart because you
Yeah.
can't prioritize where to start and start the. Okay.
But at the same time, how do you budget for something like that, right? Or how do you plan, for the outages and all the things that we've experienced in the last, 3 or 4 days. Because, that makes sure you got a lot of a surplus budget. That's for sure.
That's
Yeah.
for sure.
And
You
these
said
things,
money was no issue.
right? And it just makes you. The thing I take away from what we just went through is the expense of the problem, right? And this is just a microcosm of the greater issue, right? When you start getting into climate change, but
Sure.
This is a huge cost, and it's interesting about how you can absorb that into a functioning economy without making really drastic personal and commercial changes. And
Come
then bracing.
Yeah, you're talking about like country size national debt place.
Investments. That's. I don't think I'm being an alarmist. I just
It's doing the math.
Yeah.
The math ain't math. And it's like there's no way unless you have like a national budget type, national level type budget. It's too big of a thing to have. In an economy that's somewhat struggling to begin with.
All economies are not always. They're not too far ever from being in bad shape, right? They're stable, but it's not going to take a huge shock to throw it off track, right? So,
Yep.
and that would
And
be
that
something
would-
that
yeah,
would be more than you. So,
Definitely.
having said that, these are issues that all of us are responsible for and can have an impact on. So, one of the things I'm drawing closer and closer to my heart, in my stage of my life is we all have the ability to be better people, right? Or to be more responsible to something.
Yep.
And that might be our greatest impact in some of these existential issues. So, just what can I do in my everyday?
That's thinking about the podcast. That's exactly what it is getting, we look at it as, okay, we can't be the only two people that feel this way, right? And as I do this podcast, I'm finding out there's more of us out there that think the same. And if we get more of us to just do one thing, somebody's gardening, somebody's becoming a vegan, somebody's doing different things, advocating, and we got lobbyists and stuff. Like everybody's chipping away at it. But you're right, like fundamentally, so I looked at it, and I know people have heard this on this podcast before. What did it for me was, I've always been passionate about the environment, but I went to a climate strike, and it was like fifth graders crying, like I only got one planet, I don't have a, and it dawned on me, it's like I failed that generation because this is not like I woke up today and have all this. I just woke about climate change. I've known for 30 years, and so that's why I feel so passionate about like they're putting in the work. My generation's kind of left them hanging. So the least we can do is be a voice, try to gather people together. And if I can get, we can just get people to start doing one thing and maybe doing less of another thing that's impacting the environment. And I do think we have a lot of economic clout, but we don't know. Like I use this all the time. When I go to their Tesla stations to charge, it's a lot of people that look like me. There's a lot of times it's a lot of people that look like me, but we're all looking at each other like Spider-Man meme, like, oh, is it? You know what I mean? Like it's like, yeah, we're the ones that's driving this thing, but we're sitting back and letting others kind of just let it, just let it fester. And so I'm hoping that we can generate some passion amongst people like ourselves to do more, get active.
Great idea.
You know what I mean? Just be more active. But one of the things you brought up in the earlier piece, and I'll make sure that I turn the camera around so we can see some of these HVAC systems you're talking about, is we talked about the decisioning process and why it's really like, obviously you're not going to choose an EV if you can't afford to get bread and eggs and stuff like that. So I get it. Like people have to make a choice. And I'm just fortunate I'm in a space where I can kind of stand on business and say, yes, it's easier for me to fly to meet these people to do podcasts, but I want to reduce my carbon footprint. So I'm driving. I'm driving 14, 16 hours, and people are like, you're crazy. But I'm standing on what I believe. Like, it doesn't make sense to be talking about climate action and be flying everywhere. So, but everybody does it. To your point earlier, speak to that a little bit about the decisioning process and what people have to weigh. And obviously, we're not judging anyone. We're saying do what you can from where you are, right?
As you know, my background's in engineering. That's kind of the first way I think about things.
Yep.
But again, in my late decades, I understanding that so much more than psychological, right? And the decisions and why you make decisions are not, do the analytic work, do the engineering work, and do all that. And at the end of the day, you're going to do it because you want to do, especially these sort of things.
That's right.
That they fits into your lifestyle or into, whatever you're feeling that day, right?
Turning
For
the switch
most
off
people-
and on doesn't take a lot of energy and thought, right? So to that point, like it's not much for me to turn the switch light on and switch on.
That's right. You got to really, really want to and believe that whatever your choice is the right thing to do. Like I said before, I'm not really sure. But I mean, me personally, I haven't studied it. I haven't done
You
my
mentioned
best
the
to
EV
read
data,
on-
right? Like,
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, it probably is not as dramatic as we think it is.
Yeah. You want to speak to these some of the HVAC systems you talked about, some of the heads.
Yeah. So we're standing on a building that was retrofitted in 1995. These units were dropped on here in that time. So yeah, they're 30 years old. The two package units, one for each floor, they suck air up, return air up from the space, condition it here, and then pump it back through the ductwork downstairs. I don't even know
Where's the filter?
filter is.
Oh,
Right
that
here.
big.
Yeah, it's right here. This is a drip for the diagonal filters in there. The air comes up through here and clean. But I don't even know what refrigerant is used in this system. I have no idea. I know it's old technology, 30-year-old technology, so the efficiency in it is low, to a great extent, right? But even the chemicals that are used in here are not the best. They're not environmentally friendly, and they probably lack the efficiency that the newer ones have. So,
And how do they dispose of? Like, you know what I mean? How do they dispose of?
well, if there's any left in the system, because I haven't turned this on in 3 years, and some of these things tend to leak, and that's why we're getting all the problems in our environment, because they aren't 100% contained. But the cost of taking this off and putting something new in is a significant expense, one that I'm committed to do, because not only is this probably not even working anymore because I've used it for so long, but even if it was, it's a thing you do when you're upgrading a building and getting new tenancy in it. So, but this is an example of the decisions that people have to make over and over again to invest into not only a working, well-conditioned building, but into a better environment. And then along that line, there are all sorts of different price sets, right? There's an A selection, a B selection, a C selection that can give you, more or less efficiency, energy conservation. So, the decisioning that you were talking about earlier, this is all part, a component, an illustration of that, and how you get spaces in Atlanta cool during the summer.
Speaking of hot man, you just got this skyline view. You wanted to speak with some of the decisions that they could make, some of the infrastructure buildings that might impact it as well.
Yeah, like I say, because I don't know all the stats, but what I do know is that the majority of our conservation impact that we can have, is where what you're looking at right now. It's in these towers, not also due to waste, right? Because we don't need to, cool the floor, let's say. But also in the efficiency of the systems that are in some of these older buildings. So all these buildings that you see here were built in the 90s. Yeah, I don't think you can see one. Actually, the one in the foreground was retrofitted just a few years ago, so that's got all new systems. but all the ones in the background are dogs. You know, I mean, these are buildings from the 90s.
Oh, gee.
We were really, you know,
Really?
prioritizing this stuff. So, you know, the cost of taking a functioning square foot and making it energy efficient is a real capital decision to make.
Catch me out here in the world, doing what I do. All I know is pouring dreams come true. Catch me out here in the world, doing what I do. All I know is pouring dreams come true.
Hey, saluting Tostiticas. We live in Puerto Vida out in Costa Rica. Catch us by the pool with a host of chicas. They working and twerking like they supposed to freak us. Toda Rica es la choche y crica. We doing it for the gram, I had to post a pica. One hell of a week, bruh, heat roasting the speaker. When the party's over, had to ghost and freak, bruh. I ain't trying to get exposed to the Zika. 3 showers a day, fresh clothes and sneakers. Entonces basic cojones, I keep a stone face or a smile and move at my own pace. From the back, she looked the same as Cardi. You never pull mommy's bull, your game is sorry. Plus you flex at the lamest parties. Nights we hit the club when we leave, they say buenas tardes.
Want you to be my whole world, just us two. All I know is pouring dreams come true. I want you to be my whole world, just us two. All I know is pouring dreams come true.
Hey, hoy se bebe en la playa in Puerto Rico trying to enjoy the ladies. Escuche el cookie, man, that noise is crazy. I'm run circles around all of these young boys, baby. Compromiso, estoy borracho. Está brutal como el guapo muchacho. Blow creepy and smell the aroma. Plus that white rum got your boy in a coma. Puff stogies and try to keep it smoky. Enough of y'all know me, I'm trying to keep it low key. Entonces basic cojones. Si yo tengo millones en colones. I rock a mask when I'm quarantining. Plus I take them to task when they start to scheming. Ladies take slofies, I'm at the bar between them. Pinch me to wake up, I think I'm quarantining.
Want you to be my whole world, just us two. All I know is pouring dreams come true. I want you to be my whole world, just us two. All I know is pouring dreams come true.
Hey bro, you gon' have to run that back. All these joints is built like they've been running track. It's the heat when you want that slap. And these bars is worth about 100 stacks. Hey bro, you gon' have to run that back. All these joints is built like they've been running track. It's the heat when you want that slap. And these bars is worth about 100 stacks. Hey bro, you gon' have to run that back. All these joints is built like they've been running track. It's the heat when you want that slap. And these bars is worth about 100 stacks. Hey bro, you gon' have to run that back. All these joints is built like they've been running track. It's the heat when you want that slap. And these bars is worth about 100 stacks.
The energy, see we use an awful lot. Energy, you think we'd be sick, I'm running.